front. So page 14 in the pink in June 2016. And I usually go above and beyond just the question. So that's just to give you a bigger overview because the questions will vary, right? And this will just help us to review all the concepts we've covered, okay? All right, question 13 in the booklet, page 14. Omar buys a new car. I'm going to highlight things that you should be looking for. Right, it's a new car with a base price of, right? Base price is same as price, just doesn't have any options. It's standard, right? And purchases the following options. So there are options there. Navigation system, sound system. Nicely set up there, easy to read. Calculate the cost after taxes of purchasing a new vehicle if he receives $3,000 for his trade-in. Okay, so what I need you to remember is that cost of purchasing a new vehicle would be right? I think I talked about that base price plus any options, plus if there is freight mentioned, you would add that. That's the delivery charge, right? Minus trade-in. Okay. Obviously, this is before tax, right? Like this formula would be before tax. If it says after tax, right, which it does here, all we need to do is multiply our final answer by 1.12 because it's 8% PST, 5% GST, so that's 12%, right? And so whenever you do this, obviously you're going to have to add multiply by 1.12 to get your price after tax. So we're going to calculate that cost of purchase. 21,800 plus the 1,000 plus the 800. We don't have this, so omit minus the trade-in. Let's come up with that. I would always suggest to break everything down and show your steps, because if you make a mistake and it's minor, you can still score, 1.5 out of 2 easily, even if you make a small mistake. Okay, this is before tax. Let's be clear about that, right? So 20,600 times 1.12 is going to give us our, and I don't care how you calculate the taxes. If you do it the different way, where you multiply by 0.12 and then add that to your before tax price, and make sure you always have 2 decimals when it's a monetary, meaning dollars, right? Don't forget your dollar sign, don't forget the 2 decimals. Circle your final answer stated clearly, okay? And we'll make a note here. Trade-in is always subtracted before taxes. Okay, if you subtract it afterwards, it's going to be wrong. Okay, you're going to lose that. Like we get a detailed answer key with this, and they will actually always tell us if a student takes up to $3,000 afterwards, deduct 1 full mark, because it's a concept error. It's not just a small mistake, you didn't carry over a 0, or it's actually concept, okay? So go ahead and write this down. I'm going to try to tame my booklet a bit to behave. So if you have your vehicle finance booklets, I strongly encourage you to just flip through them and see what things pop out. Right? Oh, I think my network is back up, but. I'm going to pause here. I don't want it under complaining that it doesn't. Right now, the network is not working great. So, anyways, let's go over to the next question here. So this one is worth 2 marks, right? Obviously, I gave you way more than what this question asks of you. They don't ask you to write down the formula or anything like that. Okay. 14. State one disadvantage of buying a used vehicle. State, right? You don't really have to explain, but you have to be specific. Okay? No need to explain. Comma, but be specific. So they basically have to have evidence that you took the course. Yeah. Go ahead. You can't, right? You can't say something that, something vague, something, I'm going to try this and see if I can score marks. If we don't see evidence that you took the course, you're not going to get the mark there. So let's give a few options here. It's a used vehicle, right? What you can say is potential higher maintenance cost. Okay, so the wording is important. Like, yeah, you can say higher maintenance cost, but it's potentially, right? Sometimes used vehicles are pretty reliable and there's nothing wrong with them, right? You only pay PST, and then you have to be specific if bought privately. Okay, that is a big, you need to include that because it's not always the case. Okay, you only pay PST. What else can you put down? Cheaper to insure. Because remember, for insurance, the type of vehicle, the value of the vehicle has, oh, sorry, disadvantage. So scratch this, guys. This would be advantages. My bad. Right, these are advantages. So anyways, it's good to review the advantages as well. So just make sure you label them. This is a disadvantage, potential higher maintenance cost. Disadvantage continued, not as safe. Not as safe, right? An older vehicle doesn't have all the latest safety features, right? You can say costs more to safety. It will cost more to safety. Remember, you need to have a safety for the vehicle, and it will cost more. Okay, so there you have. Don't include, like, make sure you label this as advantages. Disadvantages would be cost more to safety, not as safe. Potential higher maintenance costs. So read carefully, I guess that's what I'm trying to say here. Trying to think of more disadvantages, but I think that covers it. For advantages, because this could have easily been an advantage question, I'm going to add one more Um, lower, do you remember this one? Lower depreciation. Lower depreciation costs. Like the car won't lose as much of its value if it's used. That would be definitely an advantage, okay? So there you have it. Make sure you have those. Like a lot of you think, I'm just going to think of it when the question comes and then you run out of options and you can easily, it's 1 mark per entry, right? So that's that. Very good. Move on. Okay, guys, let's do another one. Question 15. Okay, 2 marks. Okay, I'm keeping an eye on that. That's for the whole question. Like whatever is on top here is for the whole question. So if it's an A, B, C, D part, then this will tell you for all of those components what it would be out of. Okay. Mitchell is purchasing a new vehicle. There it is again. They're right talking about it's a new car. The price of the vehicle is 30,000, right? Price is 30,000 bucks, and it will depreciate 20% in the first year. Calculate the value after the first year. Calculate the value after the first year. They are essentially asking, right, the depreciated value. Right? So there's the depreciation, and then there's the depreciated value, which is what is it worth after it has lost. So first year, remember we did a number of years, but first year, right, you will take the 30,000 and you will multiply it by 0.20, right, and you get 6,000 there. This is what we call the depreciation. Okay. So if it's asking what's the depreciation, it's $6,000, but they're asking for depreciated value. So depreciated value is going to be 30,000 minus the 6 that it just lost. It's $24,000. That's what they're after. Value of car after first year. And one thing that I want to note here as you're writing this down is that never add taxes to depreciation questions. Like if it's just plain old depreciation, don't add taxes before or after, okay? We're just talking about the value itself. So there it is. The test that you'll be writing will be worth 40 marks, okay? All 3 units add up to 40 marks. So it's important to be there at 8:30 January 29th, right, on Friday. All right, and this only pertains to this group. January 2021. Make sure you write it down. Okay. Next page. And you notice how many questions are like state, right? So question 16, we're in June 2016. Okay. Manhattan is considering leasing. That is very important here, right? That's actually something we talked about, right? Leasing a vehicle for her courier company. State 2 reasons, right? Why she should not lease a vehicle. And then you have to place one response per line. You have to be specific here, okay? So we're going to do more than 2, obviously. But why should you not lease a vehicle? One thing is you always have payments. You always have payments. It's also known as perpetual payment, right? Perpetual payments. If you want the fancy term for that, perpetual, right? It keeps on going, right? You always have payments. You don't own the vehicle at the end of the lease. And again, these are things you should add to your study sheet. Oh yeah, this is a big one here. There may be, right? Additional mileage charges. Right? Remember, if you go over the maximum allowed kilometers that they give you, you're gonna have to pay. And especially if you're a courier service, you're putting in a lot of miles, right? You may have to pay for excessive wear and tear. Right? If there's a scratch, if there are too many scratches, if the seats are torn, right? Anything like that, you may end up having to pay for that. Whereas if you own it, if you put a little dent on your car, you're gonna be like, I can live with that, right? This is just my commuter car, whatever, and so forth. I think I'm gonna leave it at that. But what I am gonna do is flip this. Because there's so much room here, let's talk about why you should lease a vehicle. What are advantages, right? Why should she lease? Right, let's flip it on them. This is on page 17, right? The biggest one is lower monthly payments because you're only paying for, renting it basically. You're not paying for the whole amount. Whereas if you were to finance it, actually buy that car, it would be a lot more. Okay? You always drive a new car. Another one would be no negotiation hassle when you reach the end of the lease. Okay, like you just literally drop it off, leave the keys there, and you might actually just jump into a new lease with a brand new car, right? And leave it at that. Lower maintenance costs. And this goes without saying that if they ask you to explain, you have to explain. You can't just say lower maintenance costs, leave it at that. Then you have to say, you'd have to add a little something. Well, since you're always driving a new vehicle, right, you are under warranty most likely, so big ticket items will not be an issue for you, right? If your transmission goes, it's covered, right? Because you're always driving new vehicles, transmissions, like engines, anything like that. Obviously, you're liable for oil changes and stuff like that, but that's the case with any vehicle, right? Always drive a new car. Why is that? Well, right, you keep on trading in your lease, or you're bringing back your lease and just continuing to lease over and over. Okay. Right, next question. So they kind of mix it up, right? Like some math, some explaining, right? And back and forth. So here you look at, it's 3 marks for this whole page. Then A is 2 marks and B down here is 1 mark, okay? So let's see what comes our way here. Fuel economy. That is, those are words that should ring a bell, okay? You should have a fuel economy. You should have a buy new section on your study sheet. You should have a buy used. You should have a leasing and fuel economy. You know, like as we're going through this, definitely fuel economy should be on there. And it's in your booklet like that too. You go through your booklet, every single one of these topics is there. We know that the fuel economy is liters over 100 kilometers. She's planning a trip to drive her vehicle from Winnipeg to Toronto, and the distance traveled is 20 to 30. And it's probably a good idea to, this is actually on your formula sheet, but I would recommend you have that on your study sheet, right? Liters used, right? This is how you calculate the fuel economy. Liters used over distance traveled, right, times 100. And your answer will be liters per 100 kilometers, right? That's, you're gonna have to calculate that box, right? And it's always in liters per 100 kilometers when you end up calculating that. Okay. So this, right, this whole thing can be under your fuel economy section. Okay. So let's this is to calculate the fuel economy, okay? Determine the total amount of fuel in liters required for the trip. So total fuel for the trip. How would you do that? Well, you are given the fuel economy, right? This is the fuel economy already, so you're not going to have to calculate it. So take that and start with it. 7 liters used for 100 kilometers drive. So if you were to drive 100 kilometers, you're expecting 7 liters to be used for that stretch. Therefore, that must be equal to the distance that they're traveling is given to you. So it's 20 to 30 kilometers. Okay. and we're going to find out X number of liters, like how many liters that would be. So this is where when you're given the fuel economy, it's going to be a cross multiplying and dividing, right? So I'll make a note here. If fuel economy is given, you will have to set up a proportion. What is a proportion? Right, it's number over number, right? And then it's going to be X over number or something like that, right? Like that's a proportion. One of them is going to be an unknown there. And so in this case, you always start where your variable is. You start on this side where the X is. And then now you're going to go across, multiplying and dividing going down, right? So if the X is on this side, you start your journey with a number times divide. So it's 2230 times 7 divided by 100. That's 156.1 watt. We are in liters. You don't need to do 2 decimals, but I will, just because I want to get used to it, not be dinged for not adding it, okay? So you used for this trip 156 liters. And now usually they follow it up with how much would it cost you to make that trip. Determine the cost of the trip if the fuel price is 130 per liter. Okay? So cost in this case, right, would be distance, fuel used. Okay? This is a formula I'm just making up right now, times dollars per liter. As easy as that. Or you can set up another proportion. I'll show you both ways. Cost is 156.10, right, liters, times it's $1.30 per liter. So you just go 156.10 times 130. Don't add taxes to fuel because fuel already includes taxes, okay? Gas is already the price including tax. That's how much you would have spent on this trip. Or alternate solution would be, okay, if you used 156.10 liters to travel, what was the distance there? No, I'm sorry. I'd rather set it up the other way. This wasn't wrong, but I'd rather do it the other way. If it costs you $1.30 per liter, for 1 liter that is, right? 130 per liter, that's what the price is really saying. This is just another way of doing that, right? Then how much would you pay in dollars for 156.10 liters? And remember, liters have to match up, right? And so you go cross multiply, divide. So X is really 156.10 times 130. You're not going to divide by 1 because it's not going to do anything. So you end up with the same answer as up there. Okay. So it's very important that you have a fuel economy section in on your study sheet to calculate this. We're good? Okay. Next. Question 18, 4 marks. So this one has a lot, right? This one has a lot of a 4-mark question with, like, if you don't do that one right, it's going to cost you, right? Big time. Let's put it into perspective. 4 marks out of a test that's worth 40, that's 10%. So if you didn't do this one, you lose 10% right there. Okay. Highlighter. Alicia is purchasing a new vehicle. I don't know what's up with new vehicles here, right? That's what they're after. A new vehicle for $24,000 after tax. That's also important to highlight. She's financing the vehicle for 4% over 5 years. There's a chart which you should recognize, right? That's just a loan payment, right? Chart. Calculate Alicia's monthly vehicle payment. Okay. Notice that I will make a note here. No down payment mentioned. You have to watch out for that, because if there's a down payment, then obviously you have to subtract the down payment before you calculate your payment. Okay. And now I think I can fit all of this in. Yeah, so payment will be amount borrowed, right? Like loan times rate divided by 1,000. I will change this rate to table rate, because some students take the actual interest rate, which is 4% divided by 1,000. That's wrong. Okay. So what is our loan? Our loan is 24,000 times. Sorry, you can't see that. 24,000 times a table rate. Let's go get that table rate. 4%, right? Over 5 years takes you to 1842. This is a dollar amount, right? It says per $1,000 borrowed. This is a blended rate that you're paying back that contains interest and principal at the same time. So 1 mark for this, 1 mark for that, and sorry, 1 mark for the final correct answer. That's 442.08 per month. And I'll just make a note here. Loan on the side is price minus down. Okay. So if there had been a down payment, the loan would be, right, the 24,000 minus whatever the down payment is, and that's what you put in here when you calculate this. This needs, because the down payment brings your loan down, so you're only borrowing what's left. In this case, there is no down payment. B, calculate the total amount of interest you will pay over the 5 years. And there's the key word. Total amount of interest, not just the first month. Total interest, and here's a formula again, would be payment times 12, because it's always a monthly payment, times years. Right, so this is how much you will have paid the bank in total over the X number of years, minus the loan amount. Okay. This is in general how you treat this one. And I'll just make a note that this portion right here, total paid to bank. So if the question asks how much did you pay the bank in total, that's how you would do it. Okay. So let's calculate that. 442.08 times 12 times it's over 5 years. I'll put that in brackets, minus the 24,000. I will do this separately. It's 26, 524, 80 minus 24,000. And that's 2524.8, but make sure you put 0 in there, right? This is the final answer. Total paid. Now, let's put a line there. Interest for the month. Like if you had to do interest for the month, that would equal to loan times the actual rate divided by 100. Sorry. And that divided by 12. That's the one students mix up all the time. So you'd go 24,000 times. This one I would prefer you do on the side. So it's 4% divided by 12. A lot of us can just do this one in our heads, right? It's times 0.04 divided by 12. This is not what the question is asking, but I'm thinking, you know, this is the time to talk about it. So it's $80. This is for the first month. Interest for the first month. So out of that $442 payment, $80 goes towards the bank, and the rest is what we call principal. Let me bring this up a bit more so that everybody can see that. This is a complete aside, but they do change it up on you. Okay, depends on what year you're talking about. Good. 19. Is this the last vehicle finance? Yeah, this is the last vehicle finance question. And then we'll start. I think I'll do probability next. Okay. Julie's moving from rural Manitoba to Winnipeg for her job. Her insurance, there is insurance, told her that it will now be more expensive to insure her car. Right, so we're talking insurance, obviously, so that's another section that your study sheet should have, right? We went from buying new, the cost there, right? Buying used, leasing, fuel economy, insurance, okay? And make no mistake, like I can't cover everything, right? We took weeks to cover it. So I'm just trying to kind of give you an overview. State why Julie's premiums will increase, right? State why her premiums will increase. She's, you can say that she's going, you know, there are different areas, right? And you're going now to a more dense area. She is changing her location, right? To a bit, you can say busier, to a busier part of the province. Okay, more traffic equals more potential collisions. If you want to go accidents, go for it, right? And something like that. She's changing her location, and that's why that is going to be the case. You can say denser, right? You're more dense. Rural, it's more, spread out. But that would be the main reason why it will be more expensive. Okay. This one I remember was there was some controversy amongst this one, but if you would have put down that her purpose, the purpose, you know how you go from all purpose to leisure to I think it's storage or layaway, right? There's different types, and some students said, well, she could have probably had it insured under leisure for only using it every once in a while. Now it's going to be all purpose, right? You can say that would also be acceptable as long as it's, again, we have evidence that you took the course, right? B, Julie retires from her job and wants to continue driving her car. State what she can do to decrease her premiums. And there's the word retires. And it retires. How can you decrease? There's a couple of ways you can do that, right? Change the type of insurance from all purpose to leisure. Right? That would make that happen. Increase, another way she could do increase her deductible from 200 to 500. Okay, if you increase your deductible, you're less likely to make a claim. You could also decrease third-party liability. Third-party liability, that's always in the millions, right? I think it's 1 million, 3 million, 5 million, or something like that. So if you decrease that amount, then obviously your insurance is also gonna remove the option, right? Remove the option. You know, when you have that loss of use, you haven't insured a vehicle. I'm pretty sure a lot of you are not quite familiar with this, but I'm just going to say this. I'm not going to write it down. But if you remove the loss of use option, meaning that if your car is ever in a collision, you get a free rental, that would also be acceptable. And so all of these are stated. Yeah. Third-party liabilities. If you and another person, right, like two cars collide and you spin into like a store and you smash their window and damage like other people standing by, all of those costs would be included under third-party liability. So that would be, I think the minimum is 1 million, and then I think it goes to 3 million, and I think up to 5 million. Like even if you hit a hydro pole and the lines come down, and like things can happen, so that's called third-party liability. Or if you're a delivery truck, like if you're an Amazon package delivery, all those packages are damaged, like there's an iPad in there, whatever, that would cover it. So there's a special, if you ever do that, all purpose doesn't do it. there's a special insurance for delivery. So if you deliver pizzas or if you're an Uber driver, you need to get that, or else you don't have full coverage. Okay. One thing, you have to be specific, right? It says she wants to continue driving her car. If you had put down layaway, that's the where you store your car and it's still insured, but you can't drive it. That would not be acceptable because she still wants to drive. Okay. All right. Let's go. Now we're going back to probability. I was thinking probability is going to be a bit of a breath of fresh air to some of you. It's not as intense, but you still need to know your stuff, right? We have 10 minutes left, so let's see how much we can get done here. Probability, that's on page 8, by the way. Josephine has 3 white, 5 blue, 6 purple marbles in a bag. When I see marbles or like anything like that, I right away I add them up, right? 8 and 6, that's 14. I just do that because I kind of know where it's gonna go, right? You're gonna need your total when it's probability. Remember, probability is favorable outcomes divided by total, always. That's essentially what it is. State the probability of randomly selecting a purple marble from the bag. Right? Probability of event A happening, right? Favorable outcomes divided by total. Right? Total possible outcomes. That's essentially what probability is. And A just stands for an event happening, right? In this case, the probability of drawing a purple marble would be there are 6 and it's out of 14. Don't reduce, just leave it like that. But here I'm going to review this part. You can state it as a decimal. So let's say it's 6 divided by 14, it's 0.43. Okay, so you would write down 0.43, no problem. Let's say you want it as a percentage. You got to go 6 divided by 14 times 100, and that is 42.86%. So it's not 43% as a lot of students would normally be tempted to go, but I would just say stop right there. They don't specify how you're supposed to state it, so I would say stop right there, but this is also an option, right? So you're done, 1 mark. Does that make sense? Yeah, that should, I don't know when it starts, when probability starts, but I feel like it's at grade 5 where you start talking probability already, right? And so a purple marble is pulled, watch this, a purple marble is pulled out of the bag and not replaced. That's very important. Not replaced. That is, if you see that it's not being put back or anything like that, we call that, you should be thinking dependent events, meaning that the first outcome will affect what happens next. Okay, because you're not resetting it, you're taking one out and not putting it back. State the probability of randomly selecting another purple marble. Another purple marble from the bag. Okay, so probability of purple in this case would be, there used to be 6, now you have 5. There used to be 14, now you have 13. Right, you go 14 minus 1, that gives you the 13. 6 minus 1, that gives you the 5 because you're not replacing. Okay, very important. If you want it as a decimal, 5 divided by 13, that's 0.38 times 100, 38.46%. But this is good enough, right? Please don't reduce unless you're 100% certain you're going to get it right. Because if you reduce and it's wrong, you have to take marks off. Okay, so I would just say leave it as is, don't change that. What if, can I add a C here if you don't mind? Because, right, it's already set up, I don't need to do much to add a question. What if the second marble was a blue one? What if the second marble was a blue one instead of another purple? You know how it says another purple? What if we took out the first one and it was a purple, and then the second marble was a blue one? Probability of blue. In this case, the top number is not affected from what you had originally. If you go all the way to the top, you have 5 blue ones, and you only have 13 left because you removed, right, 14 minus the purple, right, gives you that. The blue has not been affected, so that's just 5. So sometimes you have to subtract 1 from both, right, and sometimes you only have to subtract 1 from the denominator. So just keep that in mind. Hey, coincidentally, it's the same as B. That's just luck, right? That's just coincidence. 8, 1 mark. Whole page available just for 1 mark, right? That's kind of bizarre. But that has thrown students off in the past, so I had to kind of warn them. How about we make this our last question, okay? State the odds in favor of a tidal wave occurring given that the probability for this event is 3 out of 147. And I now forget the formula that I gave you, to be honest. But odds in favor would be favor and then against. Okay? And both of these together always add up to the total. So you can't have the total in one of these, oops, you can't have the total amount on one of these sides. That's like the biggest, most common mistake students make. They will put the 147 on either the left or the right, and that'll be wrong. Okay? So probability of the tidal wave, if you want to think of it that way, is 3 out of 147. Okay? Odds in favor of that occurring, so I'm going to just say favor. Odds in favor would be 3 to, I always go 147 minus the 3 I already put down, which would be 3 to 144. Those would be the odds in favor of it occurring. Odds against of a tidal wave occurring would be just flipping that, 144 to 3. Okay, but they're after this one. This is the correct final answer right here. I'm just adding this for your own information. Okay, and I ran out of lead as well, so that's a sign to be done for today.